But I really don't have any regrets. I really don't. I've lived exactly how I've wanted to. I've tried my hardest every single time. I didn't win the matches that maybe I should have always won, but I really gave it my all. So that for me is enough.
Hello everybody, welcome back to The Body Serve. I'm Jonathan.
I'm James.
And we're in a new era. We're in the Mirra Era.
Yep. Oh wow,
yep.
Cute.
All of them other ladies to the side. It's over for all of you. World dominance is here. But before we get into that, a follow-up on the cricket segment from the last episode, which, to my delight, a lot of y'all seem to enjoy.
Even a few people who don't know anything about cricket. Thank you. Very nice.
Indeed. I did get one suggestion from Sharon H., who said that it was a missed opportunity to not have Danielle Collins in the squad as the wicketkeeper, chirping and cackling and laughing at people behind the stumps, which, absolutely a missed opportunity. With more time to think about it, I was reminded of that PR event that Venus and Serena did in Australia to start one of those seasons. I don't know, 2016, 17. And one was batting and one was the wicketkeeper. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
So given that Venus is still an active tennis player, she could also slot in as the wicketkeeper because she has experience.
Okay. Are wicketkeepers known to be mouthy?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Because they sledge the batsman.
Right.
Do you know what sledging is?
I do.
Okay.
Americans don't use that. I think I learned it from Australian sports or something.
Yes, that's where you would have learned it from.
Canadians say chirp.
Which
right?
is very docile.
Oh, okay.
Well, what does chirp, 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 chirp? There's no sting to that, you know? We'll start with Mirra Andreeva winning Indian Wells, this being her second consecutive WTA 1000 title. At this event, she beat Gracheva in her first match. She beat Clara Towson easily in her second match. Rybakina in her third, easily as well. Svitolina in the quarterfinals, Swiatek in the semis, and then Aryna Sabalenka in the final. A similar run to what Madison Keys pulled off to win the Australian Open. And what's super crazy about this comparison is that they beat the exact same players from the round of 16 onward to win the title. Rybakina in the round of 16s, Svitolina, then Swiatek, then Sabalenka.
Yes, in the same order. I wonder how often, or if ever, that has happened in two big title runs like that. She beat the trio that was once crowned the WTA Big Three, Rybakina, Swiatek, and Sabalenka. The top of the women's game is seeing a minor slump over the first few months of the year. Coco Gauff not in the top 10 in the race. Sabalenka doing the best of the three or four. Rybakina dealing with the fallout from Vukov being banned. And Iga Swiatek not making a final since Roland Garros 2024.
Right, you say that, but it's mostly only in terms of winning tournaments.
Yes.
Because in the top five in the race, Rybakina is still number 5, Swiatek number 4, Andreeva is 3 now, Sabalenka 2, and Madison Keys is number 1. It's only Coco that's not there at number 12. I think what this speaks to is the WTA being in a really good place.
Okay. Well,
okay.
Some of them, yeah.
Well, not everybody can win every week. I don't understand what's going on here.
To me, it's not like a statement on the entire WTA or the health of the tour.
Women's tennis is in a good place when you compare it to where the men are.
Well, that's for damn sure.
Individual players on the WTA have individual problems that they're dealing with, but collectively, they're all still making quarterfinals, semifinals. They've left this opening here for Mirra to just fly right through. We'll see what the ramifications of that is for them long term, allowing this to have happened. But everybody's still there.
Except for Coco.
Okay.
But she's not far off. We've seen these stretches of bad play from her before, and she can get back on course.
Oh, it's like you caught yourself sledging Coco just there for a second and decided...
That's as far as I'll go.
And decided to wheel and come again.
In this run, over the past few weeks, Mirra has beaten Iga twice, a former Indian Wells champion, of course, and the defending champ. Rybakina twice, another former champ. These were her first wins over both of those players, and has now beaten Sabalenka once. She and Sabalenka had played twice before this year, both in straight sets, Sabalenka winning. Mirra didn't even win a break point at all in those first two matches.
She came into this match with a stat of something like 0 for 11 in those two matches with break points, and then right off the bat, she squandered break points. And then lost the first set 6-2. And you're like, well, damn.
Right. In those two matches that she lost, and this final, she was creating opportunities. And I think she got to, 19 break opportunities in a row over those few matches that she had failed to convert. Once she converted a break early in the second set, the complexion of the match changed a lot. Arena was very dominant in the first, and I don't know, with Mirra don't even have a huge sample size from her yet, but it never feels like she's well and truly out of something.
Mirra now leads the tour in match wins with 19, and that's because Aryna Sabalenka cleared Madison Keys in the semifinals. I mean...
What the hell?
6-love, 6-1. It looked like it was heading toward a double bagel, frankly.
Aryna said in the post-match that she wanted revenge on Madison for the defeat at the Australian Open. Makes sense. Madison was riding a 16-match winning streak starting in Adelaide through Melbourne and to here in the semifinals. The less said about this match, the better. Madison throws in one of these once in a while, but the scoreline was truly shocking.
But then it kind of makes sense, too, in that you have a reappearance of the Madison that we used to know, given in combination with the super windy conditions and in conjunction with a new, more powerful racket. You can see how this could get away from Madison quickly because she can't find the court, which was her previous problem. We just kind of thought that maybe, given all the winning that she's done this year, that
it was cured?
We wouldn't see that to such an extreme again. But I think the conditions were ripe for it. Especially considering how ready Sabalenka was for it as well.
And in the final, her game was so imposing in the first set, as I said. Andreeva was always looking for chances, right? She generated 4 break opportunities in that first set. And as it went on, it feels like, oh, God, you better convert one of these, because this match could be over quickly. And she did so early in the second set, held on to that break throughout the full set. And her game sort of came alive. You know, when she was younger, dare I say younger, she's still only 17 and 11 months. She was compared to Hingis for her court sense and the sort of finesse that she could put on the ball. And we still see all that, but we also see a big serve, improved movement. She's obviously put on a lot of muscle. Her game has real pop.
She's grown.
Right.
She's taller, she's bigger. She has the power that Martina was never able to get. Now, what Mirra did in this match to Aryna, I'm not even going to get into the technical aspect of it, what her strategy was. I want you to remember the match and remember Sabalenka's reactions. I think these are some of the biggest tells when watching her. What you need to do is try and get Sabalenka flailing. When you have the arms flailing all over the place, then you know she's entering peak frustration. And that's what you really need. You can't be getting into a match where at the end of the first set, she's missing balls and the crowd is, ah, and then Aryna is lifting her head to the sky and smiling, putting on a charm offensive in conjunction with the bad shot. When she has a good disposition about the shot, that's when you know you're in trouble. That's when you know she's performing, not just with her shots, but for the crowd. Now, when you're able to get her to have a few of those in a row and frustrate her to the point where she's losing her blob, to quote Billy Elliot, on the court, that's what you really want. And that's what Mirra was able to do.
And how do you do that? Well, you wrong foot her a few times. You get back balls consistently and deeply. You hit forehand slice defensive shots on the run that drop in for a winner on the sideline. These are like highlight reel shots. Get these on the highlight reels. I don't need to see another tweener.
You get her to have a few Joko smashes. Those help.
Mm-hmm.
And then you maintain your consistency. You don't allow your level to dip. It's what Coco did to her at the US Open. It's pretty much exactly what Coco did to her at the US Open.
What's really impressive about Mirra is that loses the first set in a final and is able to think through what's going wrong. What haven't I tried? What failed in the first set? And she comes out with some new ideas, right? And she's also a player who has been prone to frustration and still is. But she's able to, is that mental strength? Is it the freedom of youth? Or is it just her? Or maybe a little of both?
Yeah, I think that might be it. Mirra becomes the second youngest player to defeat the world number 1 and number 2 in the same tournament. Only Tracy Austin was younger, who did it twice in 1979 at the age of 16, at the US Open and Filderstadt. Mirra is just 1 month younger than when Serena did this at the US Open in 1999.
And that was, of course, against Davenport and Hingis. Tracy Austin was terrorizing those women in the late 70s and early 80s. Big up to Conchita Martinez, Mirra Andreeva's coach. This relationship is clearly working. Conchita was coaching Garbiñe for a while before her retirement, and Martinez is just such a cool, calming presence. I feel calmer watching her. I feel like I'm in good hands.
It's amazing what that type of presence can do for a young woman maturing in life and in tennis. That you can have such a calm, nurturing presence and voice, and that's helpful.
Mm-hmm. But I think Conchita is also a no bullshit presence. Mirra said in her acceptance speech, you told me I was being a brat earlier, and I was, so thank you. Conchita also apparently encouraged Mirra to start seeing a psychologist to get some of, in part at least, to get her anger under control. And of course we still see flashes of it on court, but it's improved.
Look, I'm not the only one who is noticing this. Sabalenka took the time to basically say exactly that in her runner-up speech, saying she wishes she had a team like Mirra does now when she was her age back then. Now, whether she was just taking a cheap shot at somebody.
You know who.
Well, at 17, she wasn't coached by Tursunov. But It could be, one of those creative licenses.
It may not have been literal about the exact age. Arena was 20 when they started working together.
But we see all the time these men terrorize these young women as they're coming into the sport as young women.
Oh, yeah. Or run them into the ground.
Yeah.
Or make them feel like shit about themselves. So it is refreshing to see a successful woman coach because there are so few, even on the women's tour. And I thought it was really nice that Arena took time in her speech to praise Mirra's team. She didn't have to do that. On Tursunov, I was trying to remember why I had this gross feeling in my mind when I thought of his name. And then I was like, oh, right. I remember now. It was when Pam Shriver tweeted about Vukov years ago. This was like the first explosion of all that stuff. He tweeted at Pam and said basically how shameful it was that she would slander someone like this, who is solely responsible for you knowing who Rybakina is.
Oh,
nasty. And he's had some really unkind things to say about women's tennis in general. I don't know why he coaches women's tennis. Actually, at this point, I don't know that he does. Also, Natalia Zabaiko, Daria Kazatkina's girlfriend, called him a shit man.
Oh.
Last year.
I believe her. Maria Sharapova sent a congratulatory tweet.
Yeah, that's actually a really big deal. Maria doesn't really do that.
She quote tweeted the WTA account and said, "Mirra, pink heart. Many congratulations, so poised, so well deserved."
Maria's Twitter feed is mostly promoting her investments and various brand deals and stuff, so it is actually a big deal to see her tweeting at another player. It is very tempting, and it's going to get harder and harder to resist to jump into the hype train with Mirra, and the achievements speak for themselves. It's not unwarranted, but anything can happen in tennis. We don't know what the future holds, and we've said this many times before, I think, but it's nice just to, like, experience the moment, observe what's happening and enjoy it before saying so-and-so is going to be the next whatever. Like, Mirra wants to win 25 slams. She said that. And she should say that. And she should believe it. That doesn't mean that that's any of my business. What do I care? I'm just going to watch and see what happens.
I am going to bookmark your words on that, because if we are still doing this show in a couple years and she has 5 slams, I guarantee you'll be singing a different tune.
Oh, no. I mean, I don't want anyone to get near Serena's record. I've said that before. I mean, near. I guess
you said it's
near
none of my
okay.
business.
No, it's none of my business what she thinks about her capabilities or what other people think. I would like, this will never happen, but let's just let it breathe.
Iga Świątek. Let's get into that.
Okay, so we were watching this match, and this barely even registered.
We were half watching it because we were putting together furniture as
right.
well.
Iga was frustrated. Ball kid threw her a ball. She kind of smashed it back. It went up and over into the stands. The angle was, I'm told, not very forgiving. Right, based on the camera angle, it could look closer or farther from the ball kid. Point is, that's crappy. You should never do that. That should have been, at the very least, a warning. And nothing was made of it during the broadcast.
Well, it also happened in conjunction with her complaining about the ball kids.
Mm-hmm. So you're complaining about the ball kids, and then we see you smash the ball in one's direction. It doesn't look right.
Well, I don't know about the actual sequence, whether the chicken came before the egg or what have you. But it just wasn't a good look altogether. So much so that it pushed Iga to issue a 4-page letter on Instagram.
Yeah.
Sealed with a kiss.
Very unusual. Really unusual for her.
Did you get the reference?
Yeah, the Elias.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay. She said that she's been deeply impacted by the positive doping test toward the end of last year, and that it really hit her in Dubai that she didn't have a chance to compete for the number 1 ranking. That she's too far behind, she has too many points to defend coming up, and she's just not in a good headspace. And she asked for a break from this, quote, constant judgment, and feels that she can't win because if she doesn't show emotion, she's called a robot, and if she does show emotion, she gets heavily criticized, like this. And I mean, this particular incident broke through. It was on People magazine. How often is People magazine even covering tennis?
Iga's had many charges leveled against her in the last year, be it from doping officials to poor sportsmanship allegations to gamesmanship. We haven't always talked about it because we try to live a peaceful life. I don't understand what's going on specifically with Iga. I guess we have to take her word for it. All I know is the last 2 times I've followed her progress in a tournament, she's reached the back end of the tournament as the favorite to win it. Mm-hmm. Because of just how dominant and imperious her play has been. She played better than anybody leading into the semifinal. When it comes to being pushed by the top players, that's where she's having a lot of trouble recently. Mm-hmm. We've talked about how she hasn't won a tournament since the French Open last year. This is French Open light for her at Indian Wells. This is her court. These are her conditions. And so I think we're seeing the frustration of her not being able to win the baseline things that we and probably she takes for granted that she should win.
Right.
And if this continues through the French Open and she's not able to win that tournament, that's when it's time to pick up the red phone. It's time to signal across Gotham for some help, because something is not right at that point.
Right. Because she's beating a lot of good players. She's trouncing players ranked lower than her in early stages in these tournaments, right? Especially here and in Dubai.
She destroyed Karolina Muchova.
Right. Beat Zheng, who, of course, she lost to at the Olympics. And people are saying, oh, Iga's back. Like, she's looking really good. Watch out. And then it's like she has this mental block. She's not fighting. Or she is fighting, but it's not working against the top players. Top players and Mirra. And Ostapenko, who is her perennial bugaboo. I don't even really see Ostapenko as part of that. That's just a reality Iga will always have to deal with. If you take what she said at face value, she has told you why she's struggling. Right? Mm-hmm. The doping test affected her way more than we realized. I think the tennis world moved past it pretty quickly compared to everything else that was going on, compared to Sinners.
There have been so many.
Right. And this was a pretty big one. She said it messed up my preparation for the big events at the end of the year. Then I get back to Australia and I have another tournament that I'm not happy with. And it just keeps... And you can see how someone can get into this vicious cycle. Now, I do think that she kind of explained away and laughed off the ball kit incident. I felt like that was a rationalization.
That wasn't cute. I think a lot of people struggle to see the performances against Zheng Qinwen and Muchova and then see her lose to Andreeva twice.
Right.
Like, it may not be a grand indictment of her writ large, but maybe Mirra is just a problem for her right now. Everybody has these bugaboos at certain points in their career, and then you either get over them or you don't, and you're Richard Gasquet against Rafa Nadal.
Oh, wow. But as you said, it's unusual for Iga not to make a final in 9 months.
It is.
Right? And it's not just Mirra who's the problem. That's unusual. Carlos Alcaraz is facing a similar issue, right?
Is.
It doesn't get as much criticism, of course. I'm just of two minds about this, because I feel that Iga deserves the criticism for the incident in this match, but people also like to pile on, right? So this will be a cause célèbre, and everyone's going to be looking for things to criticize Iga about, even when they're warranted, but it's too much, right? Yeah. Even when they're deserved, it's like, okay, it's enough.
She's not playing
Sharkeisha,
poorly.
no. Leave her alone.
Well, this is why I pushed back at you at the start of the episode. These women, except for maybe Coco, are not playing badly.
Right.
Iga's not winning these events, but she's making semifinals. She's just beating some top-flight players easily. And then losing matches.
And what's happening? The mental side, it's not working. So what is Daria doing?
This is your big...
No, this is your favorite topic. Paraphrase Bianca Del Rio, what do you do successfully? Quickly. Mm-hmm. Why are you, as a psychologist, on the side of the court...
A sports psychologist.
Okay. Are they not psychologists?
Sure.
They have their degrees and their certifications. Yeah. Why are you on the side of the court when Iga is clearly mentally struggling? Why are you yelling? Why are you, in my perception, inflaming the situation? And why are you acting like a coach? She has a coach. Whatever this is, whatever this dynamic is, it does not appear to be working.
It doesn't appear to be healthy either.
No. And I'm not going to go into all that because I don't know them, but her fans, like her diehard fans, have been questioning this relationship for years. Is it time that somebody outside of the camp or somebody, a commentator even, says, what is going on here?
Wim has not been able to do anything about it.
No. And I mean, if you look at the the results, he hasn't made much of an impact as a coach.
That is, I see, again, Australian Open, she loses 10-8 in a final set tiebreak in the semifinals. She could have easily beaten Madison. And to make an Australian Open final, that would have been the first time she'd ever done it. In the midst of this almighty slump that she's supposedly in. Right?
Okay.
She's so close to winning these matches. She's not being trounced. She goes to Qatar and she loses being trounced by Ostapenko in the semifinal. Never beaten Ostapenko. We know that. That's an asterisk. Dubai loses to Andreeva 6-3, 6-3. And then, again, losing in 3 sets to Andreeva at Indian Wells. Sure. She's not losing to no-name players.
No, I agree. And I mean, this could all be moot soon, right? She could go into Miami, win it. She could run through the clay season again, take her ceremonial loss to Sabalenka in the Madrid final, win Roland Garros again. That would be a start. And then everything we talked about is just like, well, that was something that happened in the past. But I don't know. I never really got Iga. I could never say I really understood her. And part of that is because she's guarded about what she shares, which is totally fair. That's her personality. But I don't know, something just feels off.
Okay. On the men's side, Jack Draper beat Holger Rune to win Indian Wells.
This was Jack's first Masters semifinal, first final, of course, his first win. In this final, Holger was simply never in it. Right? 6-2, 6-2. Jack's serve and that kicking forehand are just really vicious on this surface. He hit 10 aces in the final. His first serve percentage was only 50%, but it didn't have to be better because he won over 90% of his first serves. Never faced a break point in the final.
So Draper has arrived, right? This is the big takeaway. He's been cresting for a while, and he has emerged above the surface now. He's here.
Mm-hmm. He's been on a strong trajectory over the last year or so. He lost a lot of time in his career early on to injuries. Last year, he won Stuttgart and Vienna, reached his first Slam semifinal at the US Open, and then this year, he's already the runner-up in Doha and now the Indian Wells champion. He's been followed by these doubts about his fitness. And I've said on the show before that I wasn't sure if it was actually fitness or if it was kind of fear and anxiety he was dealing with that was causing these symptoms. Either way, it's not fun to watch. Kind of felt bad for him. I think it's still sort of up in the air whether it's physical or mental or kind of a combination of both. But you saw even in the semifinal against Alcaraz, there was a period where he kind of looked cooked. He looked roasted. And his coach said something like, take in more oxygen. Like, just focus on breathing.
We were definitely on vomit watch in that second set, even though barely 40 minutes had been played in that match.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't a physical issue. It was mostly mental at that point.
Yeah.
One could surmise. His rise in recent months, US Open semifinal losing to Jannik Sinner, won Vienna, beating Khachanov in the final, Paris Masters, round of 16, gets to the Australian Open, has to retire down 2 sets to Carlos Alcaraz. And that was mostly because his first 3 matches of that tournament were 5-set slogs. That was a physical issue, you could surmise. Yeah. He gets to Doha, makes the final, loses to Rublev, and then Indian Wells now wins the title, avenging the loss to Alcaraz at the Australian Open. He beats him in 3 sets after suffering the first bagel of his ATP career. Similar things happened with Mirra and Jack in these semifinals. Losing big in those second sets. Mirra to Swiatek and then Draper to Alcaraz, and then they both are able to recover in the third set. Against players who you'd expect that once they have that kind of momentum against that type of opponent, they would be able to close.
During this run, he dispatches 3 Americans. The recently returned Brooksby, number 3 Fritz, number 11 Ben Shelton. All very different types of players. Opened against the wildcard Fonseca. Got through that without incident.
Did you see that Fonseca will be playing Lerner Tien in the first round in Miami?
Oh, really?
It's
These
like
two are just linked.
they're aligned. Jack moves into the top 10. He's now number 7. Mirra is up to number 6. It has to be said that Carlos was not at his best in this match. This after dismantling Grigor 6-1, 6-1.
Yeah, that was an example where the opponent was gassed physically, coming off that long, late match against Monfils. And apparently Grigor dislocated his left thumb in that match. Did you hear that?
I did not.
Yeah. But Alcaraz has not made a Masters semifinal since Indian Wells last year. This is the only one in that stretch. And yeah, something's going on there as well. Gets up for majors, but in a bit of a head-scratching place everywhere else. The decision-making is, it's always been sort of iffy. Like, his talent is so huge that he can overcome that. He loves to put on a show. And in stretches in that match, he was just awe-inspiring. But the decision-making is not really where it needs to be.
The semifinals, specifically Holger versus Daniil, which had both Daniil and Carlos won their matches, it would have been a rematch of last year's Indian Wells final. That was one of the most infuriating matches I've ever seen in my life.
No.
It absolutely was. A 38-shot rally in the final game of that match. By design from Medvedev, only to lose it. I was screaming internally watching it because nobody wants to see it. Nobody's enjoying it. They're not enjoying playing it. We're not enjoying watching it. This patty cake tennis, backhand to backhand, bloop, 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 bloop. We're told all the time that men's tennis is so much better than women's tennis, and that one of the main ways in which it is because the women don't play strategically. That there's no strategy in women's tennis. Well, if this is a strategy, I don't want it. This made men's tennis look like Tony Soprano running waste management as a front for something else. Like, this cannot be professional men's tennis. If this is what it is, I don't want it.
I wondered where your idea for the title came from. I'm still not sure on the metaphor, but I'm going to run with it. The problem is that it wasn't working. It didn't work at all through the match. And Holger came in very clearly with a strategy that, although it's going to bore you to tears, it is going to be effective. He said, I know what Daniil does. I know how he grinds down his opponents and then can smack a forehand past you. This weird windmill-looking shot. I wasn't going to get drawn into the games. I'm not here for the games, Mariah. They're playing games. He wasn't going to be tempted to go too big too soon, so we got a lot of backhand slices and a lot of just staying in the point and waiting patiently. But the problem for Daniil is that a lot of those rallies just ended in his own errors rather than winners from Holger.
I will say this, the match was great gowns, beautiful gowns. I enjoyed Daniil's kit. I liked that the bottom of his shirt blended into the color of his shorts. I thought it was one of the more interesting looks that the men have given in a while.
Oh, Daniil's?
Daniil's, yeah.
Oh, wow, I did not like it at all.
I said it was interesting.
Okay.
I didn't say it was amazing. It was something to look at. I kept trying to wonder where the shirt ended and the short started.
Right.
Really, I watched
it's really never something that I'm looking for in a kit.
I didn't know I needed it, but I liked the different look that I was given.
I actually liked the twin kits worn by Holger and Jack in the final. It's just a shame that they were both wearing the same thing.
Jack went to the tailor and cut some off of his kit and tailored it better and gave it to Holger.
Jack moves into the top 10 at number 7. Holger is back, grown up a little bit, with a little more discipline. Did not have a chance in this final, but at long last, after so many ups and downs, I am actually happy to see him playing well.
You are?
Yeah.
You've forgiven him?
No. I mean, he was like 17 at the time. That's not an excuse, but I don't forget.
You're allowed to forgive him.
Well, he didn't do anything to me in particular.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't, as I said, I do not forget. And if I do, I can go into my long library of screenshots on my phone and remind myself why I have this sinking feeling, like I did with Tursunov.
You have so many screenshots.
It's really important. Because you know what really gets my goat? Is when people say, I have it on strong authority from multiple anonymous sources that such and such is happening, because I save it so I can later prove them wrong.
But you never do it. You never do it. There's this one person...
I do it on the show sometimes.
Okay. And then when I get closer to naming the name, you're like, no, we can't.
Fine. Fair enough. I just know. It's important that I know.
Okay. There was a mixed doubles tournament at this event.
There was. This is actually the second year in a row that Indian Wells has put on a mixed doubles invitational. Last year was 8 teams. This year is 12 teams.
And who won?
Well, the best doubles player in the world, Sarah Arani. With Vavasori, they were the number 1 seeds, beating Maddox Sands and Pavic in the final. Bethany, wow, she's
still out here.
She's still out here, isn't she?
In women's doubles, shout out to Asia Mohammed and Demi, whose last name I still...
Shores.
Okay.
Something like that. I listened to it, but Dutch is impossible.
They took the doubles title over Mihailikova and Nichols. They beat the number 1 seed of Townsend and Siniakova in the semifinals. And they also knocked out the best doubles player who ever lived, as you just said, Sarah Irani, in the first round.
And Paulini, the Olympic champions. Asia Mohammed is 33. She's been out here forever. She recently entered the doubles top 10 for the first time in her career. Now she moves up to number 8. This is her second 1,000 level title after Cincinnati last year. And Shurs has 4 Masters titles and 20 career doubles titles.
Where are you after I said on the last episode that we're going to Indian Wells next year?
Where am I?
Where are you?
Maybe this is a good time to take the question about Larry Ellison.
As with the last episode, we're going to wrap up the episode with a few listener questions. A reminder to you all, on a rolling basis, please send in your questions. You never know when they'll be answered on the show. We were asked by Neil Sandel on Blue Sky if it was worth scrutinizing Saudi Arabia's sponsorship of tennis, and it was. Shouldn't tennis also scrutinize the politics of the oligarch who owns Indian Wells?
Well, I'm so glad you asked.
We've gotten to the Western and Southern Open and the Charleston Open with Uncle Ben Navarro. We've covered that.
We've covered Madrid with the former owner, Jan Tiriac.
And now let's do Indian Wells.
Just, getting blacklisted everywhere we can. Larry Ellison is the founder of software company Oracle. Larry has been a big fixture in tennis. You see him in the stands all the time. He's been a big supporter of Donald Trump since the first term, and actually one of the only of his lot who was a consistent supporter in 16, 20, and 24. You can blame Larry partly for the coup of TikTok, for the overthrow of the Chinese ownership of TikTok, and now he finds himself in prime position to potentially purchase TikTok. Did you know that? And I've said it once, I'll say it before, pardon my language in advance, but dick riding Trump, it pays off until it doesn't.
Larry Ellison also has close ties with Elon Musk. He has a seat on the Tesla board and a $1 billion investment in the Twitter acquisition. It was revealed in 2022 that Ellison also participated in a call looking to help Trump contest the 2020 election, the first tech leader to do so. And so, yes, we will not be going to Indian Wells next year.
I mean, that wasn't the point. I wasn't trying to tell you not to go. But we were asked to talk about Larry Ellison, the oligarch who owns Indian Wells. That is the only appropriate word for it. A lot of these tech guys have built much of their wealth on massive government contracts. They want to, of course, shrink the size of the U.S. government to the extent that it does not hurt their business, right? Elon Musk and Tesla and SpaceX have massive government contracts. Those aren't going to go away. A lot of other people's jobs will, of course. Oracle was one of the first providers of like data storage and I don't know, something for the US government decades ago, and continues to get huge contracts with the US government. Big government is only a problem when you're not directly invested, of course.
Well, or when your investments aren't jeopardized.
Right. But it actually relates to another question, which came from Cheryl Harris on Blue Sky. How do you find the joy in watching tennis when A, your faves have retired and none of the current players stir you as they did, and B, truly destructive acts are happening such that you feel guilty sitting hours watching tennis? To me, when I hear B especially, like, do you feel guilty just wasting time when the world feels like it's burning? There's no ethical consumption under capitalism. I think we've said this before. There's no ethical consumption of tennis, period.
No,
right?
no.
I mean, maybe going to your local high school and watching high school tennis for free. That's probably ethical. But the idea that there's no ethical consumption under capitalism is a Marxist idea to relieve some of the burden on the poor and the working people, to tell them, like, shopping at Walmart is not destroying our world. Right? You are not responsible for the decisions of the people who own the means of production. And you don't really have to be a Marxist to follow this line of thinking. The path to liberation isn't really based in ethical consumption choices. You know, if everybody recycles, if everybody consumes in an environmentally and socially friendly way, capitalism does not die, right? That's not where liberation lives. So, I do think it's possible to enjoy the things you like and still fight for what's right. I do think it's essential to take time for yourself and participate in the things that bring you joy. Because, like, what are we without that? You have to decide to what extent those things you enjoy are either a distraction or destructive.
If you allow yourself to get caught up in the madness of the world that we live in and consume it 24/7 and decide that your entire being is going to be working to undercut it, to fix things, to make a change, make a difference, you will absolutely burn out. There's no way to live life without taking personal time for yourselves. And for some people, that could mean reading harmless fiction books, you know, feckless stuff, rather than the most highbrow literature, you know? Watch your Below Deck. Watch your Real Housewives. Watch your trash TV. Read your trash books. You know, if that brings you joy, it's serving an important purpose.
Or read Harry Potter. You know, I'm not going to read Harry Potter again because that's my choice as a consumer, right?
You just gave away all the books.
Exactly. But I'm not judging you if you want to read it to your kids, or it still brings you joy because it belongs to us now. That's a whole other discussion. But it's like a more loaded version of what you were saying.
No, excuse me as I ascend my high horse here. But I think this is where our show fits, I think, in the tennis ecosystem of podcasts. We try to be that mix of holding to account and levity. Mm-hmm. And being able to dabble in both.
Yeah, which is actually why sometimes when we get like reviews that say only that it's funny, I think sometimes we didn't do our job. I don't know. That's just a personal thing.
But if that's what people want from us, if that's all they take from us, that's what they need.
Yeah.
Would you rather be unfunny?
No. It's funny because I just never really thought I was funny.
Those are usually the most funny people. The ones who don't try.
I mean, at home I try all the time. I can barely get a laugh. you know?
That's because I'm a miserable sour bitch, James.
Well,
I don't know what to tell you.
You said it. But there are two things in the question here, right? One is watching tennis kind of distracting and wasting my time from fighting some very serious fights? And secondly, should I feel guilty about watching tennis at all? Like, is it just frivolous? And I don't really find much use in giving it up. I don't think that really benefits the world. And it's easy to say, like, as a privileged person, you can say, oh, there are no ethical choices under capitalism. I can do whatever the fuck I want. That means different things to someone who is poor versus someone who's very wealthy, right?
Mm. You don't have to have tennis. You don't have to watch tennis. You don't have to play tennis. You know, it's a luxury that we afford ourselves. Mm. And if you're able to spend money to go to tournaments, to travel to tournaments, to support shows like us, if you can do that, you can choose to do that strategically. You know, maybe you do avoid the Indian Wellses of the world, the ones run by Ben Navarro. Maybe you do that. Maybe you do more fine-tooth comb research into the background of these tournaments. You know, if that makes you feel better about being a part of the sport and allowing yourself that enjoyment, go for it. I don't think it's necessarily, you know, because you should be able to enjoy things that you enjoy, period.
Right.
Just be aware.
And the question is asking specifically, how do you find the joy in watching tennis at this historical moment? And including some of your favorite all-time players leaving sport. How do I find the joy?
You don't.
Sometimes. Not always. To be totally frank, sometimes I don't find it.
You're in your Andre Agassi era.
Right. I think it's very important to be honest about those things. To me, it's not always an escape. You know, for some folks, it's their safe place, or it's where they go to escape. For me, sometimes it's like, ugh, I don't want to do this again, because it feels like work. But how I find the joy in tennis, a lot of times is from going in person, because it's a completely different experience. And I really get to experience a player's athleticism and the way they think in a way that you can't see on TV.
And let's be real, you get to watch certain men up close and
sure.
see how they look.
That's also great.
In person.
I'm only human.
You're not that kind of girl.
What does that mean?
You're not that kind of girl that they can break down and think that everything's okay. You're only human.
Wait, what song is that?
The one that you don't like. I'm not your superwoman.
Yeah, of course. Oh my god. The other way is to read. I get interested in tennis by reading what other people are writing about it. Reading really good journalism, analysis, and not even necessarily about the tactics or the gameplay itself. If I can learn some interesting things about a player, I'm going to get into them, right? The thing, for me, it happened with Giannis Antetokounmpo. How the fuck do you say his last name?
Antetokounmpo.
Exactly. I watched a 60 Minutes piece about him living in Milwaukee, and I was like, I love this guy. I'm so interested in him now. So, a lot of times more than actually watching matches, the background stuff is what gets me, what reminds me why I love the sport so much.
What I've been doing, my pivot, has been to pay attention to younger players. It's something that I hadn't done for most of my life as a tennis fan. I'm really leaning into Lerner Tien right now. I was predisposed to dislike Mirra Andreeva because I don't like prodigies. I don't like precocious people. I did not like Martina Hingis when she came on the scene.
I'd like to thank myself.
Like, that stuff, miss me with it. But watching her through this run and her game, like the fact that she actually has power is bringing me on board. Mm-hmm. You know, that's separating from the Hingis trajectory for me. Mm-hmm. That's taking that layer off, peeling that layer of the onion.
Yeah, we are definitely sluts for power.
The other thing that I do currently to get enjoyment from tennis is to hate watch. I watch people I don't like, and I actively root for them to lose. And when they lose, it makes me incredibly happy.
That rings very true for what I know about you.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
it. Love it.
I think your people would call that bad mind.
Yeah, and if there's like a non-career threatening injury you can throw in to somebody I really dislike, no, maybe a non-life threatening injury, then we can throw that in as
the
well.
line just got moved as we speak. It's like the line of scrimmage in football.
You have to be really bad. That's not reserved for just anybody.
Sure.
You know, like when somebody fell in the semifinals of the French Open and like busted their shit up.
Right.
And I was, along with many of you all, were devastated, but also shouted down at for taking pleasure in it.
Did you take pleasure publicly? We're usually pretty careful about that.
I would have been careful about it back then.
It was Rafa though, so you never know.
I think I was able to code it so that I'd have plausible deniability.
I should say it was against Rafa.
But you remember the scream I screamed when it happened because you were upstairs working.
Yes, I was like, I was actually in a meeting. I think.
Him drop and broke him foot.
Yeah, I think that's what it was.
I think there was a more colorful way that I described it. That I'm not yet at the point to be able to say that on this show.
Right. Thank you, CDH111, for the question.
The Big Joker asks, if tennis were played on only one surface, which one would you keep? And for me, it would have to be hard courts, simply because it's the most accessible for everybody in the world to play.
Mm-hmm. Well, get ready to cancel me because
it requires the least amount of upkeep.
It does, yeah.
And also, it hasn't been the case in recent years, but you can have a good amount of differentiation between surfaces, even on just hard courts, if you wanted to. But people don't seem to want to anymore.
Indian Wells wants to.
They wanted to, but
even
they
with
failed.
Their surface change. No, I mean their surface is very different than most hard courts, or conditions at least.
No, but they tried to get more homogenized, and they failed.
I guess, yeah.
So that would be my answer.
Does indoor hard court doesn't count, right? That's a separate surface?
No.
Oh, okay.
I guess technically it is, but not for the purposes of this question, I don't think.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say grass, so cancel me. Roast me.
I would love to see you play on grass and then ask your opinion afterward.
Well, it's not about me playing. I'm not a professional tennis player.
I think we should revisit this question come the end of June into July.
Depending who wins Wimbledon.
No, based on you remembering what you actually feel about grass. I feel like grass is that surface that gets a lot of nostalgia about it. Mm-hmm. I suffer from that. I remember growing up watching Wimbledon on HBO and thinking Wimbledon was so prestigious, it was so cool, the grass is so cool. But the actual experience of watching tennis on grass, is it that fun?
Oh, I mean, it is for me, but apparently it isn't for you. And a lot of people, to be fair.
No, I know, I understand. It gives a different look, but there's a lot of, by day 2, you're going to be complaining about all the injuries.
Yeah, about the dirt just run down.
The bounces, the this, the that, how it's not fast. Grass is not what she was back in the day.
Neither are the grass court players. I'm sorry.
There is a correlation there.
Yes. Thoughts on this season's Real Housewives of Potomac?
Quickly, please.
What are the ladies going to do without the Grand Dame? That's from Brother Ants on Blue Sky. And
all I know is that she's going to jail.
She is. Yes, Karen.
Because she's had multiple DUIs. I don't watch the show. I'm in a group chat with somebody else where you and that person talk about the show nonstop.
Yes, and you don't know.
And I'll be at work and there'll be like 40 notifications. And I have to scroll up 3 pages to get to something that was asked of me.
Okay, anyway, you know Robin Dixon now because she's married to Juan Dixon. You know him as a basketball player.
I knew a lot about him.
Right.
And you didn't. Yeah.
Right. Now I know too much about him, and it's all bad. Giselle Bryant is one of the anchors of, she's the lady, the light-skinned lady with like the long blonde hair, Giselle. She's one of the OGs on Potomac. Honestly, at Brother Rants, I stopped watching Potomac this season. About halfway through, I had to give up. It was unbearable for me.
It was unbearable for me listening to you for the last 3 to 4 seasons complain about how horrible the show was, and yet I still had to hear about it.
Yeah, I've watched every season of Potomac except this one. I realized that there was just nothing going on. The fact that Mia was a central character was intolerable to me. I have this thing about Housewives that, I mean, they all lie, of course. We accept that, right? And I'm talking to you too. You're
Okay.
Housewives.
I lie?
No, Housewives.
Okay. They embellish.
Yes, but there are certain people on each franchise who are pathological liars.
Lisa.
Right. And they're impossible to watch, in my view. So on Atlanta, that person was... Wait, who was... Oh, that person was Kim. But now it's Drew. I don't think anything I'm seeing is true. Mia is completely full of shit. Nothing out of her mouth is the truth. I need like a little reality. You know, I know this is fabricated. I know the situations are fabricated. But Mia talking about how she doesn't know who her kid's father is in front of her kids, and then talking about Gordon, his mental health, and then continuing to live with him even though she says he's dangerous. And it was just a bad scene. And from the beginning, Karen was my favorite. I think she's one of the funniest people who has ever been on reality TV, like, period. But what has happened to her is very sad. And she has brought it on herself completely. This is her 4th DUI. And she's never really had a consequence for it. And then seeing how she moved through this season in denial and making excuses for it. I mean...
Wasn't there also dash cam video of how she spoke to the officer?
Then she went on and on about how she was Thomas Jefferson's concubine. Like, please. Enough. It was heartbreaking. But Karen you can't have her back on the show. She's got to go.
It's like Jen Shah.
Exactly. And there's still people who want her back on when she gets out of prison. Because her release date keeps getting moved up and up and up.
Wait, when is she coming out now?
Oh, I think like 2026 or something.
Really?
Yeah, it went from...
10 years.
This is Needy Leaks. It done went from 10 years to 5 years to 4 years to 3 years to 2.
This is Phaedra's pregnancy.
No. This was when Cynthia says, "Oh yeah, I know Mark. I've been knowing him for 8 months." And she's like, "Well, no, maybe more like 6 months. 4 months." Johnson EA also asked for a Bravo catch-up. She asked for a Bravo catch-up every time we do a question period. So I feel like we have to deliver. Aside from Potomac, we watched Salt Lake. Salt Lake is just so good.
Salt Lake continues to give.
It's the gold standard now.
People were like, what's going to happen when Jen Shah is in prison? How are they going to do it? And they said, those concerns are unfounded.
It's actually going to get better.
Yeah.
Now, I am not a Lisa Barlow fan. I think the show would do perfectly fine without her. There were rumors last week that she was possibly on the outs. It turns out I think she was holding out for a better contract, so she is back filming.
Ugh.
She's not leaving.
Is Meredith back too?
I don't know. See, Meredith is another one who I feel like is a liar. More than even the average housewife. I feel like there's so much about Meredith that is not true. And I'm tired. She's so, as she says, disengaged. Well, she's not giving anything.
This is the problem.
Just go to be a friend of.
People like these women when they're engaged. You become fans of these women, of watching them when they're engaged. When Nene Leakes was engaged, 5 stars.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
When she became disengaged, when she starts to build this persona of being constantly attacked, when they become constantly aggrieved, which is what Meredith has been for the last 2 seasons plus, when you're not offering anything interesting. Okay, the bat mitzvah was... that was something she gave this past season.
Sure.
But there was nothing else.
But Meredith, at this point... I mean, to be fair, none of the women on Salt Lake can read worth a damn. Like...
Damn.
No, I mean, not like...
I knew the U.S. education system was bad, but...
I mean, they can't read. So...
Well, they're also like white women from
they are.
Mormon culture.
Yeah, this is not their culture.
No.
But there is a white lady reading. A white lady shade. They just don't really have that particular skill. It's not subtle. When Meredith argues, it's like a sledgehammer. And it's the same with Lisa. All they do is scream. And I'm tired of that. I'm tired of the screaming. It's just on 100 all the time. Angie is such a great character because she's funny. And she's actually having fun with it. So the high body count hair thing, that she was basically saying it tongue-in-cheek, but also kind of pissed off. That was an absolutely genius move from her. Because we can laugh with her as well.
It was slut-shaming. And do you want to talk about the slut-shaming? I will not be slut-shamed.
And Angie disrespected my hearing aids. Are we doing that now? Oh my god. Yeah, so Angie, I never thought I'd say this, but like she's doing the work. She's one of the best out there. And for a while I was like, who's Angie? Just like Mary.
Right, well, they're also coming to terms with their snowflake melting. Right. While Bronwyn, she is just glaciering up. while Mary has resurrected herself from her church's crypt and she's back. While Angie is coming to the fore, despite knocking on the door for 3 seasons. You're in bed and there's Angie knocking. Can I get in? Can I get in? She's finally there. And so you are now not giving anything new. Why are you here? Meredith and Lisa.
The challenge in Salt Lake City is that they're running out of women who were not at the Capitol building on January 6th, 2021.
Well.
What else on Bravo? Still watching Below Deck. I mean, Below Deck has... its peak is long since passed, but I'm still really enjoying it.
It's something we do out of habit. It's our Monday night.
It's fun.
We'll watch it before you go to bed at some point tonight. You don't necessarily even have to pay much attention. I'll probably be doing my fantasy baseball draft while I'm watching it. While I'm also maybe eating. I don't know.
Right.
It's not good. It hasn't been giving anything new for a long time. Captain Jason now is buying into his own hot boy hype.
Right.
Like doing this captain's room like sex scene.
That like, was very cringe.
Absolutely not. The men are, well, even when they are hot, they are cringe and awful. Like the
Vian, the bosun.
Ugh.
Yeah, I mean, we're in a place now where Gary from Below Deck Sailing Yacht is now being sued for the second time for sexual misconduct. And you have men on the other franchises behaving in a way that could end in the same thing. Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Like, production needs a clue.
And we are also watching Atlanta still. Real Housewives of Atlanta.
God.
That's back.
It's back after like 2 years. We've only seen the first episode back. Very interesting. I've heard it called a soft reboot, which it kind of is. Drew is still here. Kenya and Portia are back. And eventually Phaedra will be back.
Wasn't Kenya back last year? She hadn't gone anywhere. She had been back for a while.
Yeah. I mean...
she's still here for now until she gets kicked off.
So Drew and Kenya are returning. But Portia's back after a long break. Phaedra's back. Kenya, we believe, gets fired. Or at least downgraded.
Right, but I think Phaedra only comes back once that happens with Kenya.
Right.
Which is why this has taken 2 years to happen. Mm-hmm. But they've decided to frame this whole thing around Shamia going forward. Why? Given that I've known of Shamia for years, did I not know that she was married to the HVAC king of the US and is like a multi-millionaire? Right. Like one of the actually rich housewives on TV? She was just there as a sidekick.
Portia's bestie.
Nobody paying any attention to her, really. Mm-hmm. And then she was friends with Candy too at one point, right?
I think so, yeah.
But now she gets to take her place as the Grand Peach.
It's very interesting,
It's so strange and interesting.
They've placed Shamia at the center as like the locus, and she knows all these other women somehow, right? I kind of like it because...
she put on a short wig, gave it a little bit of Josephine Baker wave to it, and said, here I am.
Right. And we've known Shamia for a long time, so I think it makes sense. Like, here's someone we know, but she's not really a former housewife. So it still is a reboot. I didn't realize she's kind of goofy, right? Like her personality is kind of silly, and I find her appealing. I was kind of like Shamia.
Well, we only got to see her before listening to the main Peaches bitch about something.
Right.
Her
right.
being an ear to bounce
Or
things
watch
off of.
Portia treat her terribly.
Exactly. Well, that brings us to the end of episode 370-something. Is it 375?
It'd be 375.
Should we have done something special?
I mean, we will for 400, I guess.
Damn. I feel like it's a missed opportunity.
That's 3/4 of the way to 500. Right? See, I can do math.
Is it?
It
is. Because 400 is 80%, so...
Yeah.
Yeah.
We talked about Bravo. It's fine.
Okay. My name is Jonathan. You can find me on Blue Sky at Tennis John.
I'm James at ElliotJMR.
2 L's, 2 T's. Everything BodyServe related can be found at linktree.com/thebodyserve. Thanks for listening.
Till next time.
Thank you. Thank you very much.